What you are looking at here is a list of all the British-owned car makers registered with the Society of Motor Manufacturers in 1950. Impressive, isn't it? Today, however, the few that remain are under foreign ownership. The Americans have Aston Martin, Jaguar and Land Rover. The Germans have Rolls-Royce and Bentley. Lotus is run by the Malaysians. As we moved into the 21st century, the biggest British-owned car maker was London Taxis International, makers of the Black Cab. So what the hell went wrong? Some say it was the British working man's fondness for standing round a brazier, that he spent too much time on strike, and that it's the trade unions that are to blame. Others say it's the fault of weak and stupid management who knew that no matter what they did, they would be bailed out by an equally weak and stupid government. Me? Well, I think the problems can best be encapsulated by looking at just one car. The Triumph Stag. So much was right about it. The Italian styling was sensational. Even today, it looks good.
Just one look at you, and I know it's gonna be a lovely day.
It was good to drive too, with a slick gearbox, light steering, and a smooth ride. They even got the roof right. Back in 1970, when the Stag was introduced, America was on the verge of banning convertibles. So well ahead of time, Triumph's engineers came up with this really rather clever T-bar arrangement. It would be safe if you rolled over, but you could still look up and see what everyone was talking about back then. The spirit in the sky. The name was good too. Go long on the A. Stag. I have a stag. It was the sort of car you drove with a sneer. A cad's car. You can imagine Terry Thomas behind the wheel or Leslie Phillips. Would you like to come back to my place tonight, dear? In my stag? Do some rutting? This was almost certainly the best car British Leyland ever made. Which is a bit like saying that the best song Mike Batt ever recorded was Remember You're a Womble. It may well have been the best car that British Leyland ever made, but it was still riddled with faults, chief among which was that rather important component called simply the engine. When the Stag was being designed, Triumph had access to this remarkable 3.5-litre Buick V8. Rover bought the rights to build it, put it in the P6 and then the SD1. Morgan liked it as well and use it to this day in the Plus 8. TVR are still using it too in the Chimera. And don't forget Land Rover. Ever wondered why the modern-day Range Rover can climb every mountain and ford every stream? Because it has one of these. It was and is a magnificent engine. Light, compact, powerful, endlessly tunable and reliable. So it was only natural then that Triumph would use it in the Stag. No, sadly not. They decided it would be much better to create their own V8 by welding together two Dolomite engines. As ideas go, this was a bad one. The engine that resulted was not magnificent at all. It wouldn't stay cool, and when it got hot, which it did all the time, the cylinder heads warped. In engineering terms, it was useless. As a result, the Stag was withdrawn from the American market in 1973 and finally killed off here in '77. It's mad. Triumph and Rover were part of the same company. So why didn't Triumph use Rover's engine? Why? To understand the psychology of British Leyland, we need to go back to before the war, where we find Yorkshireman and former sheep shearer Herbert Austin running Austin, and the very dapper former bicycle manufacturer William Morris running Morris with the help of this chap, Leonard Lord. Now, Len and William had a row, so Len went to work for Herbert, who then retired, leaving Len in charge. Great. We now had two big car companies being run by two guys who hated each other. Then we had the war, after which William decided that he was very old and that he'd much rather go sailing than run a car firm. So Len took over Morris to create the British Motor Corporation, BMC, the fourth largest car firm in the world. Now that would have been fine, but in 1965, BMC bought a company called Pressed Steel. It should really have been called Pandora's Box because it made the bodies for Rover, Triumph, Jaguar, pretty well everyone. And once BMC owned it, they knew all their rivals' secrets. Once BMC had Pressed Steel, they had everyone. The result, 3 years later, in 1968, was the creation of British Leyland. It was so gigantic, so unmanageable, they should really have called it British Leylandii.
Leyland cars. Austin, MG, Triumph, Mini, Jaguar, Daimler.
Leyland was the world's fifth biggest car firm, and it offered customers a wider choice than any other manufacturer. It should have been one big happy family where Triumph could go to Rover and say, hey, give us your engine. But to explain what it was actually like, we've invited along a selection of ex-employees. How bad was it then in the 70s?
There were 42 plants at, the late 70s.
42 different?
42 different plants. It was very difficult because each of those people had pride effectively in their own plant as they seen it.
Everyone was against each other. In our town there were 3 British Leyland dealers. We were doing Morris, the main dealer had everything, and there was a Triumph Rover dealer at the other end. And a whole load of dealers within 10 miles of each other, doing Austins, Rovers, Morrises, all this sort of thing.
All fighting for the same
all fighting for the same business.
People at Longbridge saw themselves as Austin still then, and people at Morris on the shop floor saw themselves as Morris still then. People at Triumph saw themselves as Triumph, and so on and so on.
But that was obviously not going to work.
No,
it was obviously
wasn't going to work, but that's how people themselves saw themselves.
Going back to this size issue, because you were saying Longbridge, how many people worked there?
Well, at its biggest, as far as I recollect, they had 27,000 people working there.
What did all these people do?
Not a lot. We used to have a fabulous rota for making tea and coffee. And we spent hours on it. The first day I arrived there, I remember being led into this department by a gorgeous bird. And she said, Reg wants to see you when you get here. I said, right. Unfortunately, he's asleep at the moment. And that's what used to happen. These guys would drop off to sleep in meetings and fill him in later.
Let me put it this way. If we were to make this programme in the same way that British Leyland made cars back then, I wouldn't have told the director what I wanted to say, and he wouldn't have told the cameraman where I was going to stand, and the cameraman wouldn't have bothered focusing properly, because he was going to get paid anyway, whether it was in focus or not. There was no sense of community living. I guess it was like being in a tower block. Everyone under one roof, but everyone leading different lives. The people in flat 46, for instance, wouldn't help the people in flat 52 with the housekeeping. The people in flat 87 wouldn't go and cook to the people in flat. Would you like to sleep with the guinea pig? But the most amazing thing is that... Oh, sorry, it's R5. That's it, I'm off. All of this meant that the various bits of British Leyland ended up competing with each other. Take the Triumph 2000, for example. Its most deadly rival was its brother, the Rover 2000. Then there was the MG, which went head-to-head with its sister, the Triumph Spitfire. And then there was the greatest battle of them all. The Morris Marina versus the Austin Allegro. I've always wanted to do this. Decide once and for all, which one's worse. With the Allegro, they set out to reinvent the wheel. No, really, they did. Look, it's got a square steering wheel. And I'd love to have been at the meeting where they decided to do this, because somebody must have stood up and said, I know, let's fit a square steering wheel. And instead of throwing pens at him, everyone else must have gone, square? Good idea. Now, with the Marina, they set out to invent absolutely nothing at all. Look, it's got a round wheel. And I'd love to have been at the meeting where they decided to do this, because someone must have stood up and said, hey, let's put a round wheel in it. And everyone else, instead of saying, oh, come on, stop being so unimaginative. Why can't we have a dodecahedron? They all went, round. Good idea. This was the point. The Allegro was supposed to have been technically advanced, and the Marina wasn't. The Allegro was designed to take on the Alfa Sud and the Citroën GS. It was supposed to reflect the fact that we just joined the EEC. It was supposed to be European and chic, a sort of wheeled cappuccino. The Marina was designed not to take on the Alfa Sud or the Citroën GS. It was supposed to reflect the fact that 6 years earlier we'd won the World Cup. So thanks very much, but we don't want any of your nouvelle cuisine. We want steak and kidney pudding, thanks very much. And make sure it's cold and lumpy. They spent £21 million designing the Allegro, which, given the fact it was supposed to be technically advanced, wasn't quite enough. They spent 40 million designing the Marina, which, given the fact it was supposed to be hopeless, was obviously too much. There's no reason at all why anyone would have bought either of these cars when they were new, and even less reason for people to buy them today. But they do, you know. You come out of the house and you look at it and you go, that's a handsome car.
I do, yeah.
It isn't,
I think
you know.
I think it's a lovely shape.
No, it's not. It's an appalling shape. It's ghastly.
It's wonderful.
It's ghastly.
It's utterly gorgeous.
I call it challenging.
Yeah.
It's fast round corners the Marina doesn't do.
No,
But it's
doesn't.
worth trying.
Radial ply tyres, disc brakes, alternator.
Hideously ugly body, nasty to drive,
Hydrogas
square
suspension.
steering wheel, unbelievably slow, couldn't get in the back. And look at the rear suspension. I mean, you probably won't realise this, but that honestly dates from medieval hand carts.
It's not a particularly bad car, it's just an outstandingly
It is.
adequate car with mistakes made in it.
It does its job. It goes from A to B. It's reliable.
It's not reliable.
It is.
It's not.
It's easy to work on.
Yes, so's a Formica work surface. So it really was a complete hodgepodge.
Not a complete hodgepodge. I think they knew where they were going. They just lost the plot and didn't look at the competition tightly enough.
You know, you can buy a sort of a Cavalier or a Fiesta.
Probably buy a Princess, actually.
Oh, no, you haven't got the idea of this at all. It's foul.
It's wonderful.
It's horrid.
I love it.
It's
I've always loved it.
hateful
From
car.
its piggy eyes to its beautifully rounded styling, I love every inch of it.
Princess.
I like Princesses.
Deciding which is the worst is like deciding which leg you'd most like to have amputated. I'd give the Marina 1 mark for having a good turning circle. And I'd give the Allegro 1 mark for having a comfy ride as you bounce over the curbs. Only then I'd give the Allegro 1 more mark for effort. I mean, at least they did try to be different. So there you have it. The Marina wins. It is worse than the Allegro, which must make it pretty damn close to being one of the worst cars ever made. When you look at one go by now, do you feel a sense of pride?
I just sort of think, oh, is it still running?
Aware of this problem, BL took the Marina to Italy, to the great styling house called Ital. And they said, look, can you inject it with some glamour, some pizzazz, some flair? Great. Except what they got back was even worse. I have here a book which was published to commemorate the 30th anniversary of Ital Design, and in it you can find all the great cars that they've designed over the years, the Alfa Sud, the DeLorean, Maserati Borum, Merak, Golf, the BMW M1, the Passat, and they even own up to some cars that really aren't very good, like the 1983 Hyundai Stella. But the strange thing is that there's no mention at all of the Morris Ital. They own up to tractors and buses and vans and trucks, but there's not a single mention anywhere of a car that was named in their honour. It was that bad. But styling was the least of BL's worries. They also had to deal with hopeless design, shoddy workmanship and biblical unreliability.
Well, we looked at it like this. The car had a year's guarantee, and it was guaranteed to go wrong within that year. And this was the problem, you see.
So, where you had a strike car, which had been left, and the car went out with no trim on one side, right? Or something hadn't been wired up. Yeah. That was, of course, that was a major problem.
Cars hadn't been wired up.
That's right.
So nothing worked.
Certain things worked, certain things didn't. If you took the indicator on, all 4 indicators went at once, or the horn blew.
Somebody came back and said, "Look, a piece of my door's gone missing." And in fact, it was a dent. A piece of filler had just come out. Where they just repaired it. It was a brand new car.
Because presumably some of these, you must have seen some design faults actually coming down the line at Longbridge.
From the shop floor point of view, we saw quite a lot of design faults as we thought, but the real problem that seemed to us was that each of the design departments worked in isolation of each other.
When the Americans said the headlights had to be a certain height off the ground in order for cars to be sold there, and then every other car manufacturer said, OK, we'll redesign the front end, but what did MG do?
They just put blocks under the suspension mountings to bring it up.
The whole car up?
And then that spoiled the handling. It became an MPV.
One of my favourite stories from those early days is this. After they designed the Austin 1800, they found out that it was too wide to fit in a tunnel that links the two halves of Longbridge together over this road here. So what they had to do was load them all onto trucks on this side of the road. And bear in mind, they were unpainted at this stage, take them across 2 lanes of traffic, and then a 1/4 of a mile up there in all weathers with salt on the roads, and then through a gate just beyond the brow of the hill. That's fantastic!
You've been used by the management in the most cynical way.
Unsurprisingly, British Leyland was on a slide into oblivion, and that's before we get to the biggest problem of them all.
Where a German manager was spending 5% of his time on industrial relations, the people at British Leyland, and Ford for that matter, were spending something like 60% of their time on industrial relations.
The trade unions would have to accept some responsibility. The major responsibility was management.
The managers who were there at the time, looking back on it now, would agree that there were lots of things they should have done earlier had they known, but they didn't know.
The whole policy that was being pursued at the time, in my view, was wrong. Trade unions had no part, or indeed no authority within that framework at all.
They were the people who made the cars. I mean, take Derek Robinson, for example. He worked in the industry all his life. And then you bring in managers who, from a business studies course, who got a degree in business management, couldn't mend a puncture in their motorbike. And then you speak about the people who made the cars as the problems.
Well, in the first half of '77, I went there on November the 7th. In the first half, there were 357 stoppages at Longbridge alone.
Strikes were exceptions rather than the rule.
In my 5 years at British Leyland, the real major crises amounted to 8, and that was 8 occasions when the whole business stood a very serious chance of coming to a total end.
Still, there was always the good old Mini. Through it all, this 10-foot symbol of Englishness just went on and on and on. But even it had problems. When it was first launched, wearing a price tag of £497, Ford bought one and took it apart, desperate to find out how on earth their rivals at BMC were doing it for the money. It took them a while, but they got there in the end. BMC weren't doing it for the money. They were making a loss on every one they sold. And to make matters worse, they never updated it either. Everywhere else in the world, cars are replaced every 4 years or so, but not in Britain. In 1979, a new government came along, and even though BL were working on a promising tie-up with Honda, Maggie's hard nuts could see only one solution: sell the lot. Unipart was first to go, then Leyland Trucks and Buses. And amid mutterings about selling the family silver to Johnny Foreigner, Jaguar was sold to Ford. When they then suggested flogging Land Rover off to General Motors, though, the muttering became a shriek. The government backed off and sold Rover and Land Rover to British Aerospace on the strict understanding that neither would be sold on again for 5 years.
The sale of Rover, the last British-owned volume car manufacturer, to BMW by its parent company, British Aerospace, took businessmen and stock markets totally by surprise.
This was a great deal. The government could say we didn't do it. British Aerospace made over 600 million quid, and Rover at last had a secure future.
You're saying that there's nothing to fear from it?
I think there is no reason for fear, because I see more chances for the new group, Rover and BMW, than for each of us alone.
Rover's to be broken up. The question is, what happens next? At BMW's Munich HQ, the board will reach a verdict soon. Here, thousands of workers at Rover Longbridge await their fate.
This is BMW's legacy, the Rover 75. Not a bad car, but in its early life a serious problem for air traffic controllers. You never saw one on the roads, but the airfields were full of them. And whose fault was this? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you BMW. They obviously went to a traditional English pub and thought, the English, they are liking the low ceiling, the wood, the leather. And we are noticing the fruit machine in the corner, so we will have the flashing lights on the dashboard, yeah? This is very British. Of course it is, in the same way that all Germans wear leather shorts and green hats. Fitting these cream dials and this Tudor Beethan wood to make it British is like fitting an onion holder to the dashboard of a Renault to make it French. It's stupid. What Rover's new owners at Phoenix must do with this car is replace the stupid interior with something that suits the mood of the moment. I'm in Birmingham, right, which is not my favourite city in the world. In fact, to be perfectly honest, it isn't even my favourite city in the Midlands. But the thing is, I haven't seen a bowler hat or the Queen or a half-timbered cottage all day. If you're going to go out in a country that looks like this, you don't want to go home in a pub with wheels. If Phoenix wants Rover to rise from the ashes, it should look carefully at these images of a modern-day Alfa in a modern-day British city before deciding what to do next. So, here we are in the dining room, and in the best traditions of Agatha Christie, I must now decide who it was that killed the British car industry. Was it Len Lord, the man who brought it all together? Or Tony Benn, the man who nationalised it? Was it the trade unions, or Maggie's Hardnuts, or the spell under foreign ownership? Well, after long and careful consideration, I have decided it was all of them. Good night.